A lot of other therapists that I've had, coworkers, someone comes in for therapy and they say, okay, let's just jump right in, let's start doing stuff. And it's good stuff. But one of my approaches, I love to take 5-10 minutes and just check in. Let's just see how things are going. How did things go this last week? What have you learned? What questions do you have? Because you're hiring me to help you. I'm not going to be telling you what to be doing all the time. Like, let's talk about it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Therapy Unmasked here at Ability Innovations. Today we have a really special guest. This is one of Nick's friends. His name is Royce Porter and he is an OT. So I'm just gonna have him introduce himself for a little bit and then we'll get talking more about what he specializes in and what he does.
Yeah, welcome Royce.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. My name is Royce Porter. I'm an occupational therapist and I specialize in pediatric and adult pelvic floor therapy. Just recently got my certification through the National Pelvic Health Network as a perinatal health specialist and just started getting into really pediatric pelvic floor therapy. I got a son with disabilities, and so learning that side of it has really just come naturally as we've dealt with it ourselves. So yeah, we started this business here in the Wasatch Front and been enjoying it.
Yeah, it's such a huge need that this is one of those things that I never anticipated when we started our clinic, of finding out like how many kids out there are struggling with issues related to pelvic health. So we're so glad to have you on because you can kind of explain a little bit more of what you do and how it helps the families across Utah and the Wasatch Front.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious though, how do you two know each other?
Well, we actually met, we were both on a panel for entrepreneurs in Utah, right? And I had met Royce a few other times kind of in passing at, Utah OT Association events or things like that. But that's kind of how we got to know each other, right?
Our paths are meant to cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that big of a world really with the OT world, but yeah. And Royce, you're starting this business, but you've been working with stuff like this for a little bit, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
So, and then the perinatal health world, I got to know an OB out in Roosevelt. So that's where I was living for the past 10 years after graduation. And I got to know him through pickleball and disc golf. Then I went to our AOTA conference and took a class on women's health because I didn't have anything else during that hour. And I was just curious, something different, something new. Fell in love with the idea, emailed the professor, the lecturer. She got me in contact with the right people to take further classes on it. I needed continuing education still left with my budget.
So you're like, let's learn as much as you can.
Let's do it. So I jumped in, started doing that. In that process, getting to know this OB really well. Then I presented him the idea of doing some acute therapy in the hospital. So he loved the idea of it. So I started working with moms the day after birth in the hospital, helping them get up out of bed, learning how to do bed mobility, roll in bed, stand up. A lot of times after C-sections, it's hard to stand up after having the most popular surgery in America.
Is the C-section.
The C-section.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that.
But it may be behind one other, but I think it's the highest elective surgery, or something elective. But we in the hospital, we'd see people after having other abdominal surgeries, but we don't ever see someone after having a major abdominal surgery, like a C-section. So
occupational therapy wasn't in there?
No one was. Physical therapy or anyone. So I presented to him and he liked the idea of it. And it took a lot of work. I was working with IT to get it in his order set so I could work with every mom afterwards. And it wasn't just doing exercises and whatnot. It was helping them know how to get on off the toilet, how to poop properly, what foods to be eating, how to sleep well, how to nursing questions, mechanics of wrist. A lot of wrist pain happens after having kids. So how to prevent that, how to protect those wrists, and then how to bounce back afterwards. So moms were able to then start coming in to see me afterwards, as early as a month afterwards at the hospital. And I had plenty of moms tell me that they were bouncing back faster than they ever had with their others.
Previous, yeah. Interesting.
So that was a lot of fun. And then by the end, when I was out there, we started doing the same thing, hysterectomies. So I started seeing those that have hysterectomies the day after, and they could come in to do therapy with me earlier. And they were a lot of fun to work with because typically those with hysterectomies were already experiencing some sort of pelvic pain or pelvic discomfort.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I was talking about just really rung true to them. So it was time to come back to the Wasatch Front where home is this last year. So we were still having a lot of fun with it. So my wife and I decided to go for it.
Take the plunge and do a business based on pelvic floor therapy. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to do this with kids. And you mentioned that, you have a child that you've done a little bit of pelvic floor therapy stuff with. And I know we have a lot of parents at home that are interested in what kinds of things that they might look out for, or how a pelvic floor therapist can help a child.
Just talking with other parents around other clinics, just the need and the desire for their kiddos. We've heard a lot of parents talk about their kids are having a hard time with bowel movements, whether they be painful or they're backed up, and why that may be the case, right? And that's what we'd get into, right? Are we constipated because we're scared that it is going to be painful because we have large stools? Or is it a sensory thing where, I've had kids that don't like tactile input, and so wiping afterwards has been an issue for that kiddo. Before my OB, I experienced at my hospital, we went down to the OB and got a Perry bottle, like the little squeeze bidet sort of thing. Yeah. And that fixed his issue overnight. Sometimes, it's just learning how to relax the muscles. A lot of even adults don't quite know how to evacuate their stools.
They don't have enough awareness in that area.
So even just if we really engage some people like to engage their core muscles to try and have a bowel movement. When that happens, we narrow that sphincter, which makes it harder actually to pass a bowel movement.
So it actually works against the process.
It does, yeah. So even just learning the process of the coordination of your pelvic floor muscles. And once that training gets down, then all of a sudden bowel movements get a lot easier. One of my favorite stories with that one was I was working with a mom with constipation, and her husband was in nursing school. And he came back the next week after we had this discussion how to practice that. He was super excited to tell me that in nursing school, he was at the skilled nursing facility there. One of his patients couldn't have a bowel movement, so he taught his patient the strategies that we talked about, and all of a sudden, this patient was having bowel movements.
They're like, wow, it's a miracle.
Yeah. So that, when we really teach someone how to poop, right? It's just... Yeah. It's not something we really think about. So it's just learning that coordination and then learning how to use those muscles, relax them so they're not so tight, and then it just makes it easier. We all feel constipated at times, and so it's helpful now to okay, I can feel what's going on. Let's work it. Let's take some deep breaths. Let's relax, and then it can take care of it.
As occupational therapists, we know that that's an occupation. It's something that you do in your daily life, hopefully daily. But also for kids, there could be a myriad of things going on, right? And then they turn into adults one day and they still have those same problems and they don't know any different because it's not something that we normally talk about, right?
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't addressed or resolved.
Yeah.
When they were kids,
and there's kind of a stigma about talking about pooping and peeing and even sexual health just as adults. We tend to not go into those conversations. But with an occupational therapist that works on pelvic floor, if you're able to do that, you can help so many people that this is just normal maybe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a scary place to be where something's not functioning right, but maybe this is how it has to be.
Even with the OB nurses that I was working with at the Roosevelt Hospital, they were having a discussion. They said, and I remember because I was doing my documentation, they were talking to the side, and I remember hearing them saying, let's be honest, intercourse after having a kid is just not pleasurable anymore. It hurts and it's not enjoyable. And I've helped plenty of women with that as well. That's where my favorite with that one was addressing mental health. I had one client come in and she came in for painful urination. After a couple of sessions, some things just weren't adding up. And so we delved more into the discussion about what could be going on. And all of a sudden something clicked and she asked me, do you feel like my history of sexual assault would give me a tight pelvic floor? And then once that kind of light bulb went off, we talked about what that may be and what that may feel like. So then how to prepare yourself for urination or intercourse. She comes back the next week and she said, for the first time in my marriage, intercourse wasn't painful this last week.
Yeah, that kind of thing is life-changing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she came in for painful urination but having pain-free intercourse. She says that's the bigger one, but she didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I mean, all of these things are kind of tied together. And yeah, I mean, these are things that we can work on with people if you have a specialty like yours. Tell me a little bit more about like your process when somebody comes into the clinic and they're saying, well, I'm having trouble with this. And what kind of process do you go through to really help them explore what's going on?
As an occupational therapist, right, we play detective like no other, right? It is so, it's a lot of questions at the beginning, right? What do we feel here? What do we feel there? I have my intake form. I have a questionnaire about, with women about, urination, bowel movements, intercourse, and even prolapse, right? That may be some issues we're feeling as well. And then we talk about what do you do for your mental health strategies? Like, what do you do to relax during the day? And sometimes people feel like what they do to relax during the day is relaxing to them, but when we kind of point to the science of what they do, maybe it's not. Especially with moms and kids, I'm a hands-off education more therapist. So I don't do any internal work for discovery. I teach moms how to do it themselves for that reason, so they can continue on their journey forever. It's not just you just lay there and just kind of let somebody else do their thing. So I teach them how to do their own examination. They can come back the next time. They can tell me what they feel. If there is some tightness that needs to be let go, I have equipment that they can purchase themselves and do it at home. And people have found great results with that. I have people fill out bladder diaries,
Bladder diaries.
How much we're intaking and when and how often we're urinating, right? Same thing with bowel movements, if that's kind of the issue we're working on. And so we have all of our intake, but then during that evaluation, we kind of see what more paperwork and homework we have to do from there. So it's a very, I take a lot of lifestyle redesign classes too. I love that field, which consequently has helped me in this field a lot too. But the research was showing for like diabetes that just tracking your food for 2 weeks caused weight loss.
It's amazing.
It is, right?
So something so simple.
Not changing anything, just tracking your food alone caused weight loss. So I've found this similar thing that when the research for bladder diaries is you just have to track your bladder output and input for 3 days. And I've just been surprised when people come back, like, all right, let's see what this. And like, I learned this and I learned this just from seeing patterns.
And you didn't even teach them anything. No, you just had them track it.
Exactly. So again, I'm trying to teach and embed those skills so that, yes, we're going to see each other for 4 to 6 visits maybe, but then it's all about the long-term plan. Because, when we're having leaking or we're sneezing and, we wet our underwear or whatnot. We had to get a change of pants. I had a teacher that would pack a change of pants every day at school because she couldn't hold it in. And
because a sneeze would just come. Yeah.
Right. And how many times do we get exercise, we do what we need to do, and then we go and get our regular lives and we forget our exercises. And then we're like, oh man, I'm weak again. What do I do? Well, you're going to have those skills.
I love that because it creates a sense of independence rather than dependence. Like they're not dependent on you and what you're telling them, but you're giving them the skills and the tools to be able to be independent and learn it for themselves and understand their own bodies. So I think that's a really cool way of looking at it.
And the quick tip is right at home today, you can start tracking your urination cycles and your pooping cycles and find out things just from that. And then you would be able to take that when you go and see Royce and be able to have a discussion about that. Right off the bat before you even see them, and you'd probably learn a lot.
It's fun playing. It's fun helping those who have felt like, like this is a normal thing after having kids or as we get older, right? This is just what comes with the territory, but just to have people gain that strength. And when I just discharged a client and she told me that she knew it was time to finish after her husband mentioned to her that he hasn't heard her say that she needs to change her pants in a while. So she said, that's liberating.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story. I heard a bunch of women sitting around talking and they were saying, oh yeah, that happens to me when I sneeze, or oh, if I laugh too hard, or if I get scared. And they were all joking about how normal that is, but it's really not supposed to happen like that.
It's not. When I first got into this, I was like, why they're muscles, right? We work with muscles all the time, and why not address that? So yeah, we're addressing that and we're taking care of it.
We probably have kids come in to the clinic probably once a month at least, where the parents are talking about my kid is having trouble with bathrooming, and maybe it's that they just want to keep going in their pull-up or their diaper, but sometimes it's like my kid can't go, and then it just comes out by itself, like the whole encopresis kind of thing. Or maybe they've gone to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, I think your kid has encopresis issues, and they're giving them some tips and tricks, but they're like, yeah, we tried that and it's usually like Metamucil, right? They're like, oh, just give them more fiber in their diet and that'll fix it. And then they go back and the doctor says, oh, you need to give them even more fiber. And, and parents are coming to us like, what else do I do? And we're like, well, there's a lot you can do. For parents listening at home, there's a lot of conceptions that we have in our lives about how all this goes. And maybe there's more that we can just learn about it. Do you do any kind of like consultations with people that just have questions?
So I do free consultations with my business model. I will do a free 15-minute phone call just to kind of talk and just...
Seems so easy.
Yeah. Just to get some tips and pointers, right? And just to see what's going on there, right? And sometimes fiber is the solution. Sometimes it's not. And depend on the fiber we're getting too, right? That's another thing to be learning about soluble and insoluble fiber. If our stools are already bulked up, we don't want to be bulking it up even more so, right? So it's, and there's just so many things that go into it, right? Sometimes it's being able to climb up on the toilet. Is that the issue, right? Our kids' feet, are they touching the floor, right? I know in pediatric therapy, we learn optimal thing for desk, right? Is that 90-90-90 position, right? And so if our feet are just dangling, then it's harder to have that said bowel movement.
Waiting on the toilet, maybe it could be at 90, maybe that works, but I often see kids like they're teetering on the edge of the toilet and they're trying to hold their balance while they're trying to go to the bathroom. Yeah. And that creates problems.
Right. So we see if there's a balance issue as well, right? Because sometimes we sit on the toilet, hands free. And sometimes if that's the case, then we're going to be doing balance activities, right? And strengthening that core, because a strong core helps the stools move through the intestines easier as well. So we could dress core and have fun that way too.
I had a thought too. Would emotional regulation play into it? Because I feel like sometimes kids will, in order to punish their parents, if they're feeling angry or upset, they'll, pee their pants. Yeah. And I've seen my nephew do that before. And so I've always wondered, like, is that related to OT and like how we can train kids, like, don't do that if you're feeling upset. Like, that's not a good way to express yourself.
Yep. Social and emotional skills are within our scope, right? And we address, and that's what's fun about it, is it's not just with pediatric or with women or men, right? I've done some with men as well, pelvic floor therapy, and it's not just about the pelvic floor, right? It's all interconnected.
And that's what's interesting about being an occupational therapist doing pelvic floor therapy, is that we're treating more of the whole person and not just like the musculature or certain activities that are involved in whatever you're doing with the pelvic floor, but it encompasses so many different parts of life. Like we're talking about social, emotional, and just like your emotional regulation. Like I don't know very many physical therapists that might do that. Maybe there's some, but definitely that's within the realm of occupational therapy. And you might get better results if you're treating all of these different angles for pelvic floor. So it's really great that we have more pelvic floor therapists that are occupational therapists, because that's our profession. We should be treating the whole person.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope we see more of it in the future, right? I presented at our Utah OT conference this last time I did it. They asked me to do two different presentations on it. And the ones that came up and talked to me afterwards were the students, right? The students at SLIC, the students at the University of Utah, students at Rocky Mountain, right? All these different places. And so that's what's fun, is that these students are hearing about it and knowing about it. It's not quite in the curriculums yet, but it will be, right? So I hope and plan for that in the future, but it's good to hear that students are aware of it, because I never heard of this in school, never even thought about it. Maybe we did one lecture, right? But school is a lot of classes. So at least hope we can get that, hope this being a focus here in the future.
Yeah, I do too. And thanks for being such a trailblazer. We need more of this therapy. Yep.
So what would you say is your approach for children? I mean, obviously here at Ability Innovations, we take on this very play-based approach where I hear Nick say it all the time where he says a child's main occupation is play, right? So we incorporate play into helping these kids reach their milestones. Do you do similar things with that with kids to help them better understand how to control whether it's going to the bathroom or toilet training or things like that? If you want to just speak to that a little bit.
I mean, this is one reason why I became an occupational therapist, because I love playing. Right? It's a blast. So with as far as the play-based approach, of course, so we can't do therapy with kids without it. I've tried when I was a younger clinician, and it doesn't work. So especially when we talked earlier that I'm going to do a lot of core work with kiddos, right? So we're going to be playing games. We're going to be doing animal walks. We're going to be doing, I have some planking games as well, right? I'm going to be doing jumping up and down off boxes. We're going to be playing around just to help get those stools moving, right? If they're having a hard time moving. I have adjusted, and it's all about what the client needs too. I've had parents talk about they just sit and play video games. I'm like, okay, well, they're good at that. That's one of their strengths. Let's teach you how we can play some video games, right? So from a kid just sitting there to then, whether it be playing, something up and active with a switch. I like to use a lot of virtual reality in my clinic. So I've got kids using the Oculus Quest and doing certain movements and certain games to help with that. And
kids love that stuff.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
They eat it up and they do well with it. And then I'm just sitting there pointing to mom. Like, it's great for me too, because I get to kind of analyze and talk to mom or dad, what's going on, see how she did that movement. Like, that's what we're looking for, right? And so I use virtual reality with almost any adult or kid that I use, depending on the age. I'm not going to put them on a super young one, but it's, so yeah, that's the play-based approach for that. I mean, if it's social skills, it's emotional skills, right? We have play, we have games to work with that. So I do plenty. I love games too. So I get to call it work though.
Yeah. And it's a fun way to learn, but we're still learning. That's the great thing. Like once you start pointing that out, like you're playing the Oculus Rift, but look at all the things that she's able to do. And the parents go, oh, this is therapeutic.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. Right. And we'll do something similar to what you're going to be seeing here as well. Right. I'm like an animal walks. I'm sure there's kids doing animal walks around here. Right?
Yeah, that's probably happening right now. I see a lot of animal walks.
Yeah, but we play games in prone too, right? Sometimes it's a posture thing. So if it's a posture thing, I'm gonna be working on those back muscles and the scapula. And so the other day I played Connect 4 with a kiddo at their house on the ottoman, right? So I put that on the ottoman, they're prone, and she's reaching up and working on that back posture. So, we incorporate games in all that we do with kiddos.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So you do house visits too then?
I do. Yep. I have a clinic opening here in Sandy, but in the meantime, we've just been doing house calls around.
So that's primarily what you have been doing while you're opening the clinic.
Yep. The clinic should be opening here in February. No, it is February now. And so I'll say March now. Okay. It's on the brink of opening up. I have the physical location, but yeah, I've just been going around doing home visits and the convenience of the home in there. We'll have the convenience of the clinic here too. Which is in Sandy. So it's been fun. We're greatly anticipating that, but I'll keep the option of home visits also because I've had such a warm reception of the ability to go into homes, into the natural environment of clients.
You're probably more comfortable working in their home with things like bathrooming and stuff like that kind of issues. Yeah.
Yep. Everyone's different. Some people feel more comfortable in their homes. Some people feel more vulnerable in their home. So I'm grateful to be offering the option of both.
The option of both. That's cool.
Be able to do that.
I don't have any more questions for you, except for our favorite question. As you've gone through your journey, Royce, when you have learned all these new skills and abilities, what superpower have you found in yourself through all of this that you'd like to tell us about?
So, kind of preempted with this question, I thought about a couple of things. The one that I've felt and I have had feedback for me is passion. I've had many clients report back that they say that they can feel the passion of this work in me, and that's contagious, right? When I celebrate weakness, because when we find something weak, we find something to work on, and how exciting that is. And I have a kid that like I said, has some disabilities. We go to primary children's regularly, and a lot of times we get told by doctors, there's nothing I can do. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure what to do. So if we do therapy and we find someone doing something and they're shaking because they're showing weakness, that's exciting.
Something to do.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So I mean, that passion, and I love this work, that it just becomes infectious and people get excited about their journey. And so instead of just being like, oh, I pee my pants all the time, well, I got to go do this therapy, I'm like, oh, I'm excited to go do this. So I feel that's one of the superpowers that I have. And the second one that I feel like, and this is, I think, unique to our career more so, but it's the power. I mean, I'll call superpower is listening. A lot of these things that I can't be a detective unless I sit there and listen. A lot of other therapists that I've had, coworkers, someone comes in for therapy and they say, okay, let's just jump right in. Let's start doing stuff. And it's good stuff. But one of my approaches, I love to take 5-10 minutes and just check in. Let's just see how things are going. How did things go in this last week? What have you learned? What questions do you have? Because you're hiring me to help you. I'm not going to be telling you what to be doing all the time. Like, let's talk about it. And because of that, like that one story of the girl with had a history of sexual assault, that would never have come up if I wouldn't have sat there and listened to her in our third visit together. So the passion and listening is what I'd say.
Those are great superpowers. I mean, we're very superpower themed here, and we feel like everybody has superpowers. It's good that you're able to see yours.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I know our audience does too. Is there any place that our audience can find you if they're looking for your services or anything like that?
Yeah. So online on empoweredclinic.com. It's Empowered Health and Wellness. We use the empowered because that's, we talked about in here, that's my goal, is the long term. I want people to feel empowered. We didn't put pelvic health into it because I felt like it's more than that. It's that health and wellness is really what we're looking for. So empoweredclinic.com is the website. We're on Facebook as well. We'll get more social media platforms as we still grow. Then you can call or text anytime, 801-215-9789. And that's my number for the free consultations. You can sign up for a free consultation on my website. Reach out to me. We're available.
Great. What a great resource.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being on. And we'll go ahead and wrap things up here today. Again, special thanks to Royce for joining us for this episode. As always, Therapy Unmasked is brought to you by Ability Innovations. We have created Therapy Unmasked as a way to give parents and individuals free resources to help with their child's therapeutic journey, whether that's occupational, speech, physical, or even feeding therapy. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to go to our website, www.abilityinnovations.com. There's tons of free resources on there, blogs, articles, podcasts, you name it. It's definitely on there, worksheets and all that fun stuff. And if you'd like to take things a little bit further with your child, thinking like maybe my child needs a little bit more help, feel free to reach out to us for a free consultation as well. And we will be able to see your child and figure out how we can best help them here at Ability Innovations. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.